This is a Harley Davidson Softail Fat Boy, and I'm going to tell you why this is the ultimate iconic Harley Davidson. Alright everybody, what is up? What is up? As always, thanks for stopping by to another video today. We are out here with our friends at Brandywine Harley Davidson in Shads Ford, Pennsylvania, and we are about to take a look at this beautiful, beautiful Harley Davidson Softail Fat Boy with the 114 engine. So I'm pretty excited for this one, guys. This is going to be my first time on a Fat Boy from Harley Davidson. A lot of different things to kind of take a look at and take into consideration with this bike. A lot of times with the Fat Boy, you know, it's very iconic for that big, fat, beefy stance with your big tires in the front, big tires in the back. Again, you've got that 240 tire in the rear. I believe that's a 160 tire up front here. And I am super excited to hop on this bike today because I actually had one of my subscribers actually tell me and ask me if I could go ahead and do a ride and review of sorts on the Fat Boy. And you know what? I was like, you're right, I've never been on one. Let's go ahead and get on one. Let's talk about the Fat Boy, see how it handles, see what the experience is like from some of the other bikes that I've ridden, get you guys some information on the Fat Boy. So let's go ahead and start at the front of this thing. Obviously, you've got your big, beefy front end here. I believe this was redesigned a few years ago, maybe when they brought it into the Milwaukee 8s, but you got this nice, bright, big LED headlight here, very big housing with the polish of the forks and the housing here. I believe they did turn this to chrome recently, and some of the newer models. This is a 21, but I believe some of the newer ones, they actually chromed this out. So coming over here, we've got the gauges on the tank. You've got a little bit of kind of a low to mid bend bar here, typical Harley controls, all that. Again, we have the polished look coming here throughout the rest of the bike with the 114 engine, the casings, the exhaust, and everything running back there with that polished look. This one does have some Vance and Hines slip-ons. Another thing to take into consideration with the Fat Boy here, you've got the solid front and rear tires on that. That's one thing a lot of people talk about. Some people say they feel the wind and stuff on that. I don't know if that's true. It's a pretty windy day today. Maybe we will find out. It'll be interesting to see what this riding position is with these bars. Floorboards, I'm not super familiar with floorboards. I haven't ridden too many bikes with them, so that will be a fun experience as well. So like I said, as we hop on this thing, we're going to talk a little bit about my experience with the power, the handling, the weight, all that good stuff, and then I'm also going to tell you why this is the ultimate iconic Harley Davidson motorcycle. So if anybody's out there rocking a Fat Boy these days, drop it down in the comments. Let me know how you like your Fat Boy, and we will compare that to some of my experience we got going on here. Let's go ahead, hop on this thing and take it for a spin. Alrighty, so we are off on the Harley Davidson Fat Boy 114. So obviously, like I said, some of the stuff that I'm interested in seeing how the plays out here is getting used to floorboards. Like I said, pretty much everything I ride or test ride always has pegs. Haven't done with a whole lot with floorboards. What I have to do is kind of remember to put my feet up like a little bit farther, kind of, so I'll be able to engage the shifter and the rear brake. So starting off with the power plant, obviously it's the Milwaukee 8 114. Not a whole lot to really say there. Like my street bob is obviously a 114, and you know, just get a lot of the same similar feeling. It's a great power plant, great engine. What is it, somewhere around like 85 horsepower, 115, 120 something foot-pounds of torque. The Fat Boy is coming in at about 700 pounds. And so I would say, obviously, the engine is, you know, more than capable of, you know, getting you cruising, getting you moving, getting you cooking with this 700-pound motorcycle. So, I mean, not a whole lot to say. We all know about the 114. If you have any additional questions about the 114, feel free to let me know down in the comments. Next up, this riding position. So we're a few miles in here so far. Pretty comfortable. My arms are at like a, you know, a fine height, a decent little bend. Already starting to get used to the floorboards. I can see how this is just like a very upright, comfortable, cruising riding position. Knees are going to be tight to the tank, probably just because it is a little bit of a bigger tank on my street bob. My knees are kind of flailing out to the side a little bit. Sometimes got to remember to tuck them in, but so far I would say pretty easy, comfortable, maneuverable riding position. Alright, so here goes my first turn with these big tires. Took a pretty easy around that one. But you definitely notice, so again, you've got the 240 in the rear, 160 in the front, and I mean, you noticed a little bit there. That was a little bit of a sharper turn. Okay, so yeah, now that I'm picking up a little bit of speed around some of these turns, you can definitely tell that you really kind of got to push it in there. It kind of want to stands back up a little bit. You know, that gyroscopic motion kind of starts to send you back up to straight up, so you kind of just got to lean it over and make sure you try to keep it planted right there while you're turning with these big rear tires. Pretty interesting feeling that I haven't really felt before. I have been on the FXDR Harley Davidson motorcycle. That's got a big rear tire and it's raked out a little bit, but was not the same feeling as this. A little bit of a turn and dip here. Yeah, this thing will pop back up really easy for you. So that's just one thing to take into consideration. I'm sure you get pretty familiar with it, as I'm already starting to get familiar with it here. This road's a little tarred up and chipped too, which I'm not super excited about, but I think the setup of this with the handlebars really kind of helps with the size of the tires, being that they are bigger and fatter, being these low bars. You can really kind of like push down in and counter steer into these turns to get the tires locked into the position they need to be, and then pop it back up whenever you're ready to get out of that turn. I'm not gonna lie, man, I think these floorboards are already starting to grow on me. It just feels like I'm, you know, just planted sitting right in a chair as opposed to the pegs on my street bob. This is a very comfortable, big, beefy cruiser. Obviously with the bigger tires and a little bit more weight on this thing, they're really kind of eating up some bumps. You really do feel good, confident, planted to the ground on this fat boy. Alright, so we're finally off that tar and chipped road there. Man, I hate that stuff. But anyways, we'll start to open it up a little bit more, obviously with the 114. Yeah, I would say, you know, obviously, like I said, pretty standard power. It gets this thing moving nice and good and comfortable. Man, I don't know what it is. I might have been wrong about this riding position all my life. I always say that I like the sportier, you know, like mid pegs and stuff like that. I was like, I don't need any floorboards and stuff like that, but man, I am really getting used to this. You could just hop on this and like your feet are just planted, comfortable. Nice little low mid bend with the bars. Obviously with my street bob bars, I'm up a little bit higher, which I'm going to be changing that out. It starts to wear you out just a little bit with those bars raised up, but I'm really happy with the riding position on this fat boy. But like I was saying, you got to make a little bit more of a move with your foot for the brake pedal from the floorboard. Not a big deal, but like, you know, when you have pegs, typically your brake pedal is just right there. You're just going to press it straight down. So some more thoughts on this fat boy. Obviously, at the beginning of the video, I called this the ultimate iconic Harley Davidson. And so why is that, or why would I say that? I just think this bike has just been such a staple in the Harley Davidson lineup for so many years. I believe this has been around from about 1990, and it's really kind of maintained a lot of that just classic big muscly Harley Davidson look. Like I said, the fat tires, the big beefy front end. Obviously with a name like a fat boy, you're going to expect all that from it, you know, big fat beefy muscly type cruiser. But I think with this being, you know, I would call this just like the ultimate iconic Harley in the lineup right now. It just looks like what you would expect a Harley to be like, look like, feel like riding it. And it's another one of those Harley Davidson motorcycles that you don't really have to do a lot of changes to. Obviously you can, just like any Harley, you can mod this thing out however you want to, but a lot of times I see fat boys very stock. For example, you know, I see people, you know, do some engine work, do some lighting, some exhaust, things like that, but a lot of times I don't see a lot of people throwing like a windshield on the fat boy, things like bags and everything like that. Not to say that you can't. I personally just don't see a lot of people doing it. And if you think about the fat boy, when it really kind of became that iconic Harley Davidson, was when it was featured in the Terminator movies with Arnold Schwarzenegger. So there's some pretty cool clips where, you know, Harley got the Fat Boy involved in that movie, and it just blew up around that time. You know, you hear people around that age sometimes say, like, you know, that was kind of one of the first times they were maybe introduced to like a motorcycle in a movie or something, or, you know, one of the first times they were introduced to Harley Davidson and the Fat Boy, and it just skyrocketed from there, man. And I would say ever since, it's just kind of like, when you think of Harley Davidson, I think this is kind of like the ultimate iconic bike that kind of first comes to mind. The silhouette and just vibe, overall look and feel of this bike, in my opinion, just screams Harley Davidson throughout the years. Let me know if you guys agree or disagree, or what you think the ultimate iconic Harley Davidson motorcycle is. I know you guys probably got some opinions on that. So we just pulled back into Brandywine Harley Davidson. We're going to go ahead and start to wrap this one up. Just a couple more final points here. Who would this bike really be for? Anybody that's looking out there to just get out there, do some good cruising, cruise down the highway, cruise down some back roads, crush a lot of miles. I don't know how much long distance traveling you want to do with this. Like I said, I don't see a lot of people doing a ton of mods to these. I guess you could throw a windshield on here somehow if you wanted to. I'm sure you could mount some bags on this, but in my opinion, that's not quite exactly what you'd want to do with it. You could bar hop with this thing. I would say this is kind of like a daily rider, daily cruiser, your weekend trips. I don't know how much long distance you want to do on that, but for day trips and stuff like that, the riding position with these bars, floorboards, was pretty good. I felt really good with that. Also, a lot of my experience, like I said, riding in the city, this is a big, beefy, muscly cruiser right here. You're not going to want to do a lot of city riding with this thing, especially with sharp turns in the city and these big fat tires. So I would say you're definitely going to want to be doing a lot of just crushing miles outside of a city environment there. Some back roads, some highway, stuff like that. Such an awesome, iconic looking Harley Davidson motorcycle. Pretty good experience on the Fat Boy today. Not something I personally would probably purchase for long term, but it's always cool to try out these different bikes and everything. Riding position was great. Something else to consider, like I said, handling with the tires, but you get used to all that and you are good to go on this Harley Davidson Fat Boy. So of course, huge shout out to Brandywine Harley Davidson, my guy Dan out here. Obviously, I'll drop all their info down in the comments of this video. If you have any questions for them, any bikes you're interested in, make sure you hit them up for all of your Harley Davidson needs. Apparel, parts, bikes, new, used, all that good stuff. Their info is down in the description. Make sure you go hit them up. So of course, huge shout out and thanks to them. That will wrap up this one today for a ride on the Harley Davidson Fat Boy. As always, make sure you ride safe out there. Make it a good one, guys. It's the Moto John. We'll see you all on down the road. Peace.